The next game was played against Ryzen, Reese number 1 fan, Septile Wen, and TBC Shobio and ODST. So I skipped right along to the end of the draft because this was pretty much exactly how our drafts were planned out, with one single exception. As soon as they showed us that Comfey, I decided on a whim to pivot to Slowbro because Slowbro has a really useful tool in Slowbeam. I haven't played much Slowbro since the last time he got nerfed. I think Slowbro was pretty good many months ago. Then he got an unnecessary buff, and he was super good. And then he took a little bit of a heavy nerf. I don't remember these timelines very well, but end of story basically. I've been playing mostly Snorlax, sometimes Crustle. Haven't picked up Slowbro in a little while. So I'm a little rusty with them, but this was the idea: is that even if they're really good, Slowbeam can counter the target that Comfey is attached to at the Ray fight, and it should help us win. So basically, that's what's happening here. So right away, we're gonna start with the early game, which doesn't actually go splendidly. We end up against ODST down here and Shobio, and they're really good at this micro stuff. So I get a little frustrated with Squirtle because the time it takes to launch the attack since you press the button of Water Gun is really long, but they used it very well to create distance between their opponents and the Indeedee, and they were able to secure the first Indeedee against a Slowpoke, which was famously pretty good in the early game. So we're going to try again right here at the bottom. And tragically, my own Water Gun puts the farm to a sliver and it gets secured by a basic attack from the enemy. So not off to a fantastic start from us. Sokovin's gank is pretty promising here, and it gets us a lot of our levels. So we at least secured the Altaria, but unfortunately, Sokovin is left with such little HP that he can't help us push this, even though the enemy are really weak. The Owl, even with his evolution in Dartrix, is not a very strong Pokemon. As you can see here, I even KO him because he fails to get the shield from the Go Zone because it was recently triggered. But we didn't have enough HP on that sword, or the Ivysaur for what it's worth, to actually capitalize on it, which is unfortunate. I think early steamrolling would have done a lot for us, especially given how the top lane must be doing. Too Many Moths seems to have gone into the jungle again just to secure that evolution that he was being locked out from. Here the Talonflame retreats into our jungle, which is a theme that the enemies are going to be repeating here. This team was really good at just holding on to momentum. So over here is a good example of something that we do pretty well in this game, if I recall correctly, and that is zoning. Too Many Moths and myself here on the double tank composition, we're going to try and zone out this Decidueye from possibly stealing the Regice. It's going to be pretty tricky because that arrow can bypass through us. Luckily, we kept him far enough away to where he couldn't have the best vision of the HP of the Regice, so Lakshmi ends up securing it. Here, I think we overstay our welcome, which is a theme that happens. It happened to us earlier in the top lane where we try and push, but we kind of, I don't know, half go in, half don't, and the enemy is really good at being able to keep us off of it. So over the course of this game, it really felt like we were getting out-macroed a little bit. Just like what we had done to some opponents, just like our first team, it seemed like the opponents always had one extra number on us. And here is a really good example. Really nice place by Shobo here. Does not let themselves get intimidated by the Slowbro. Just easily weaves around me and still secures with that arrow. I think more of us should have pulled off to do something about the Decidueye and not continue ripping until the Decidueye was dead. Easier said than done. They could have waited for reinforcements, but those are some of the little things that were crushing us here. Another little thing is how we would show up to fights all chopped up, like this. So the opponents were really good at picking some of us off and then just lasting in a fight to the point where whenever reinforcements from our side came, there was always one other person dying. And here we're just trying to farm, even though there is an objective up, because we realize that we're behind. We're not winning. If you look at the goal zones, we haven't done anything. And they've almost broken this top tier goal zone. So this team was definitely, I'd have to say, the most formidable team that we faced in the RayCup. And we didn't have a really good answer to this Scizor with a Comfey on it, unfortunately. Skipping a few seconds, because this is the deciding moment of the match, even though it didn't seem so at first glance, is right here in this fight where they actually managed to split us up. They take down Lakshmi first, a little bit lower than where the fight was going, and then they pick us off one by one, and we can't deal enough burst damage to get past the Comfey healing. We can't dive to the bird well enough. We can't crowd control the Blastoise here. So we end up getting chopped one by one, and we rush to try and defend this. The usual story for us, defending against a Regieleki right before Ray. Now here, the opponents get away with a lot. A lot of them are at a sliver here. Somehow, Ryzen dodges that solar beam that looks like it was about to clip him. And yeah, just our luck this time around. Nothing was really going our way, and right now we can't afford to be losing people. Here we're going to try and desperately get this Scizor, because getting the Scizor is basically equal to getting the Comfey. We do at least get the Unites, but I don't believe we get Ryzen here. And this is pretty bad, because they do have Decidueye and Shobo here. My fear was that he would be ripping, but guess what? They didn't need to be ripping. They were ripping us, and so it was kind of a little bit of a slaughter, this fight. So this was definitely a team that was just a level above us at the end of the day. Just like we had outclassed some of our opponents in terms of macro and being at the right place at the right time and always outclassing them and outnumbering them, this is kind of what was done to us, and you can really see that reflected in the kill counts here. So really formidable team, really great opponents. Hopefully one day we'll be able to contend with players like these, but this is, up until this point, the one team that I would say, no matter how we played differently on that day, we probably had no chance of beating this team. So you can probably assume that we weren't very happy to see this team back up in our opponent's side on the very next match. Here we have again Ryzen, ODST, Shobio, Sceptile Wen, and Reese #1 Fan. This time we try and have a plan, and our plan is to ban Mewtwo X. And yes, that is a joke, but we actually did submit it, and what happened there was that Thundertoes' controller just stopped working and we couldn't scroll. So, but we still do execute some sort of plan. Luckily they banned Glaceon for us, which is nice, awesome. We didn't want to see Glaceon. What we do is ban Comfey, because we figured Comfey was one of the problems facing us. If that Scizor hadn't had a Comfey, we definitely would have had an easier time killing it. And so, you know what? We're not very practiced against playing against Comfey teams, so they banned my Slowbro, which is interesting because I thought my Slowbro performance was really abysmal. And because we know that Sokoven plays Scizor, and we lost to a Scizor, because who was it? I think it was Reese #1 Fan that was crushing us with it. We decide, let's just give that Pokemon to our guy who plays that Pokemon, and we first pick it. So we're going to test their depth here, is basically what we're trying to do. It's the check that a lot of teams have been doing to each other. And we've kind of been on the losing matchup of that. Even though I think on a good day we're better than a lot of the teams that we ended up playing against, we definitely lack depth. At least we did when this tournament was being played, to the point where the bans that our opponents use were hurting us a lot more than the bans that we were using against them. At least that's how it felt to me. So that is my professional analysis. We do get the rest of our Pokemon that we would like. The one thing that changes is their team actually prioritizes the Umbreon, therefore taking our Pokemon. The only reason we were taking Umbreon over Clefable to begin with, I think, is honestly because we didn't want the opponents to have Umbreon, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. Like I said, Umbreon is pretty good against some of the Pokemon that I like to play, like Wigglytuff and Crustle, but I'm not playing Wigglytuff or Crustle, so it's not going to be amazing against us outside of just how good of a Pokemon Umbreon is naturally. So we don't have high hopes for this one, but we're going to do what we can, and I think we played this draft really, really well. Right off the bat, I remember the early game actually going really well here because we actually secure the Indeedee, which was awesome. I actually aggressively tackled into the opponents, and Thundertoes was able to secure with a pretty clean Razor Leaf. So already, we're doing better than we were last time. And that makes sense. We're playing Pokemon that we are more familiar with, and by we, I mean me. So at the fight for the Midbirds, it actually ends up going pretty well for us because we have the Gank, as usual. So here's Sokoven on his Scizor. I correctly spot out the Inteleon in the bush. Sorry, not the Inteleon. It is an Inteleon. I assume, I can't read the name anymore, but I assume that was Shobio, who simply switched from one sniper to the other, so he went from Decidueye to Inteleon, which makes a lot of sense. Those are two Pokemon that Thundertoes plays as well. And here we're trying to take advantage and use the momentum that was granted to us by Sokoven's gank to just try and control more farm in the lane. We don't push for the things that aren't completely guaranteed. We just definitely don't want to give anything to our opponents that they don't have guaranteed. So here we are abandoning the lane because we're going to go center. And usually we do win these fights. There have been some where the opponents have collapsed on us after the fact. But here's something interesting, is that we are getting invaded by Zoroark. So they chased too many moths through the jungle, killed them, dodged my heavy slam. I have to assume that wasn't intentional and that was really poor luck. But maybe he did read my heavy slam. Here this was not the greatest play for me. I assumed correctly that I could land on Shobio's Inteleon there, but what I didn't read is that there was going to be no follow-up because there's a Zoroark chopping up my team. So we're not off to a great start in terms of trying to beat this team that already defeated us once. The Reggie fight up here doesn't actually go too much better. We do get the jump on them, but we have very little rip on this team in terms of just 100 to 0ing an objective really, really quickly before the enemy can get here. The enemy gets here, and they 5-0 us pretty easily. So I think already we missed the necessary step that we all agreed was crucial in order to coming back against this team. At some point, we do have a decision to make, and we end up making one for the sake of getting in an extra game. And this game ends up being shorter than the others because we're just waiting for the moment that it's proven that this game will almost certainly not be getting pulled back. And this is just about it, when they're able to push this Regieleki onto us before the 5-minute mark, which is something that I feel like we could benefit from doing, is realizing that before the 5-minute mark, there's no jump pad here. So it's really easy to push these Regielekis in for an even earlier advantage, and that's one of the advantages of breaking early. We do actually fight back here, but not before we take a bunch of damage to this goal. But we do finally pick up a lot of kills, and that's why we're still in the game here. Well, actually, no, we're still in the game because it hasn't hit the 5-minute mark, and you can't concede before then. But things are pretty grim, and we're frantically trying to farm here. But someone else needed to have come to the mid-bird fight here, because if anyone contests... here's Lakshmi coming up to finish this, so that's perfect. But what we want to do is put pressure on some goal. The problem is the objective is down there, it has spawned. We pan over, see that no one's ripping, but by the time we get there, the opponents are getting there at the same time, and we just do not win fights against this team. This is something that we'll have to analyze closer and clean up a little bit of macro against, but the Zoroark really was chopping us to ribbons. Alright, here's what is effectively the end of that match. We get our first win when Lakshmi and I take this top Regieleki. We finally break a goal. Not that it means much, it was just a tier 1, so it's not that important in the grand scheme of things. We just dropped off some points, got a little bit of XP. We're going to get wiped up here, and the opponents are going to want to push into this top goal. And now we do have the jump pad, right? This isn't as easy of a push as before. Of course, the Hydro Typhoon goes off. They wipe a bunch of us here. Only Thundertoes is alive, and he's going to go down here. So they're going to get off a fat score over there. And this is what kind of seals it for us. We go over to try and... I think Lakshmi jumps first to try and pick up any KO from anyone that might have stayed over there. And at this point, our goal is gone. They've effectively defeated us, so this is how the game's going to end right here. I have one last Unite move, but it really doesn't have any effect at this point because of the level difference. So yet again, the scores don't make it look like the game was any closer than it was, which is pretty accurate. These players are really, really good, and I'm going to have a fun time getting incrementally better until we can challenge teams like this. But we have the rest of a tournament to play out, and that was part of the decision-making in our surrender there, is maybe we can squeeze in another game, which, sure enough, we did. We got 9 games instead of 8, so let's get to those games, I suppose. The next game was against Game Boy Zack, Soulbits, Scarlet, Bloomy, and Chris Heroes. Not that one. So the bans look pretty standard here. Because they banned Darkrai, then we switched to Serena, just like I explained before. Now, I immediately swapped to an Assault Vest, because our opponents are super special attack based, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. The only physical attacker they have is Mimikyu, and Mimikyu is not very threatening against tanks. Because our top laner is Sylveon, special attack compositions do not work very well against our team, especially when they don't have synergy of actual decreasing of special defense stats, like you would from a Wigglytuff, your own Sylveon, a Gardevoir. Speaking of which, here's Sokovan playing Gardevoir. The idea behind this, I actually don't remember what the idea was, I'm not going to lie, but Gardevoir does nuke really hard, if it's played behind a back line of double defenders like what we've been doing, it's a really good idea. Sylveon provides the mobility, whereas Gardevoir provides the damage. Both of them decrease special defense, so there's a lot of synergy going on here. Perhaps we were fearing that the Fire Spin would be a little bit too much for some of the diving characters that Sokovan plays, like Scizor or like Aegislash, but regardless, I don't think it's a bad pick at all, and we're going to see how it works here. We start with the standard clear. We get to the Indeedee. The opponents are really good about also skipping the double bunnies there. I am able to secure because Snorlax is OP in the early game. Unfortunately, Thundertoes goes down there, and I don't think we... No, actually, never mind. I do think we rescue this. I don't stop the scores here, but I'm going to have this Mimikyu running for its life here, because Snorlax on pad is really difficult to kill in the early game. So not too worried about this Indeedee here. They can't stay because we're going to pressure their life total, so they had to try and get it while running away, and you just don't out-secure Snorlax's tackle that way. So the early game, just like that, is looking pretty good despite the early mishap and early KO on our opponent's side. Here we decide to utilize some psychological damage here by both going after different farm on our opponent's side, leaving our little Gossifleur here unable to know which to try and secure. They do secure one of the birds, which gets them their evolution, but Sokovan's gank means that they can't push any farther into us. It was pretty successful, all things considered, despite me not catching it. Now, what about the mid-birds at 8 minutes? So all 5 of us are right on time, and we rip this right out from under everyone, but unfortunately, we have a little bit of a lapse in communication here, as I get a message from my phone that was captured in my screen recording. About half of us thought that we should go back and get our farm, and about half of us thought we should press forward. With perfect communication, either of those would have been perfect opportunities. I was scared after seeing so many of them in the top path that Lakshmi and Too Many Moths were going to get jumped up there, but if they had just simply retreated to our side of the map at the top rather than toward the middle, they still would have been able to get out just fine. And my presence made it so that we made that push a little bit more aggressive, and we ended up getting neither result that we wanted. We just got KO'd up there. So that was a little bit unfortunate, and that could have been avoided. We ended up trading objectives here. Our opponents take bottom where we take top, and we break their top goal. Here they crashed on us after killing a lot of us, but Thundertoes has a really good defense with the combination of Sludge Bomb and Solar Beam, where he can be safely behind the goal, where the opponents are still getting hit by their attacks. So we were able to defend this quite well. It's one of the many strengths of Venusaur. Now, this section was a really, really cool back and forth, where Thundertoes was the only one alive to push in. I successfully defend him from this Slowbro after he slow-beamed him with no backup. We kill the Slowbro. I find a lot of them in this bush, which allows me to power nap here. We try and go in. Really nice Solar Beam that catches 2 of them. Gets no kills so far. Kills are important, so we finally get the Pikachu there. And now I'm on zoning duty. We find a lot of them over here. We're trying to push aggressively. Unfortunate miss on the Fairy Singularity there. That would have been huge if it had caught someone. I go down, but the good thing is I buy the ability to line up 2 opponents to the Verdant Anger. The problem is, right as that's happening, all of our damage soak goes down, and only Gardevoir and Thundertoes are left on Venusaur. And so that's not enough tankiness, so we go down there, unfortunately, and we have to make do with the top objective that we get over here instead. So overall, the match was really even, and going into the Ray fight, I can't actually tell who's winning. Both of us still have a tier 1 goal and a tier 2 goal up, so it looks pretty even on both sides of the map. So it's all going to come down to how good this Ray fight is. We're feeling okay because we have a good composition. We find the Mimikyu first, but when I have sight on him, he's already retreating. So instead we engage over here. These fire spins are pretty critical, but the entire team lines up for a Fairy Singularity, Verdant Anger, Solar Beam combo, and 4 out of the 5 of them get eviscerated immediately. Delphox, we make short work of that, and the game is won that easily. This is one of the strengths of having Venusaur on the team, and Gardevoir just made that so much easier. We basically, the 10 of us almost grouped up together, and our team just wins when that happens. So, the strength of our picks. It doesn't work against every team. There are play-arounds against it, but it's such a popular strategy to, just group up and make sure you don't leave anyone behind, and so when you're first learning the game, that's such a crucial instinct that saves you so many times more than it kills you. And this team, I feel, thrives on the success of preying upon that strategy. That all things considered, should be pretty sound. At the end of the day, our opponents played a pretty respectable endgame. They even pushed into our tier 1 goal, which we strategically let them have, knowing that they couldn't actually score enough to catch up with that tier alone, and so we just backed up to the front one. These were the stats at the very end, and we move on to the last 2 matches of the tournament. And look who it is. It's our same opponents from last match. A couple of differences here. First, instead of banning Mewtwo X, we actually banned nothing. Our strategy is increasing. This was probably my fault, but I don't remember exactly how it went. Anyway, the bans aren't super important on our side. What is important are the bans on our opponent's side. They didn't hit Aegislash this time, or Gardevoir, but they did hit Venusaur, which is the one thing I really wanted them not to hit. Now, we actually try and fight back because we steal a Pokemon that they used against us last match in this Delphox. Thundertoes has played Delphox before. Thundertoes' depth at a basic level is one of the highest. He's basically played everything, he owns every Pokemon, but it's one thing to be able to play a Pokemon and it's another thing to master it. So after a long while of not having played Delphox, we'll see if he's rusty at all. Delphox is really cool. There are a lot of things that it can do really well. Fire Spin's really good at zoning. The Fireworks Unite move plus the Curse is really good at both protecting and attacking goal zones. So it's a really cool Pokemon. And here our team composition isn't really too different. We're just doing a 1-for-1 trade from Venusaur onto Delphox. But we are also switching back to this sword from the Gardevoir. So we actually lost a lot of range compared to what we had last time. In some ways you could say, based on the range itself, we traded Gardevoir for Delphox because they have a similar range and we lost that big ray that Solar Beam has. But in exchange for that, we also took a Pokemon that we know our opponents were quite good with, and we're kind of forcing them to have depth, similar to what they're doing to us. As per usual, here is our early game. I unfortunately didn't get any footage from the top lane because it was all from my perspective, so Lakshmi and Too Many Moth's plays are unfortunately not very well represented here. But what was also unfortunate is that tackle putting that farm to 1 HP, allowing the Marill to secure and get an extra stack, which is really bad. I would have really liked for that to not have had happened. Oh well. So it turns out Delphox in the early game, very much not a fantastic Pokemon. We are laning with it. One thing we could have done is have Sokovan and Thundertoes swap, but we really didn't want to play around with things too much that we hadn't practiced. So we're making sure to get levels on the Delphox there. I don't love to leave the goal unattended. That's something I heard from competitive players, that the ball toy's nice and all, but unless you're hitting a really important break point, you don't want to just leave the goal unattended when you know the opponents are stacking. So unfortunately they did have a full rotation there for the birds. Sokovan went northward to go help our team up there. When it comes to the mid-bird fight, we were, yet again, all 5 rotated down here, which is awesome. The opponents were actually quick to rotate as well, barely slower than us. They reacted to our movement, but because they got there last, they actually got the jump on us when we had used all of our moves on the birds, and that was very clever of them. I probably should stop immediately heavy slamming those birds. I learned it from solo queue because nobody rotates on time. Like, people will rotate mid for the 8-minute birds when it's like 8:12 and think that they're on time. So ripping those immediately basically almost guarantees them. But in organized play, it actually makes a lot of sense that the early bird doesn't get the worm, because they might get the birds, but if your moves are on cooldown, if you rip them fast enough, then the enemy just comes in and rips you. And so that's exactly what happened to us there. So kudos to our opponents for doing that and not sleeping on the job and making sure that they were at that mid-fight. As the game plays out, we would actually go on to lose quite a few objectives and a lot of team fights, and I think it comes down to just being on a couple of Pokemon that we weren't used to each other being on, and not having the same type of backline that we're used to having support us. And so we are moved to the defensive side of things a lot more than we're used to in this game, as you can see from both tier 1s of our opponents being up right now, and neither of ours. So here our opponents are probably going for a southward push, and that's why Thundertoes recalls. Thundertoes is pretty good at sniffing out where the opponents might be in tense situations like these. So what they actually ended up doing was just going back and taking their farm, possibly our farm, because we didn't check our jungle. That is definitely an option that was there for them. So this is a moment that opens itself up for punishment here, because we might panic like I did right there. And I said, I don't know where they are, but I'm going to at least check that they're near their goal, otherwise I'm going to punish them by dropping points in there. Luckily, I didn't full int there. I was able to recognize, okay, it's defended, so let me get out of here quickly. I burned my eject, but no biggie, it should be back. Well, actually, no, the Ray fight's coming up. The eject button will matter, but the eject button isn't as crucial as other parts of my kit, like power nap. Still, probably not the greatest idea by me. At least we have a good engagement here. All 5 of us are right here. We see Pikachu over there. Now, a couple things happen in this fight in sequence really, really quickly that spiral out of control really, really fast. And it all starts right here. I don't know why I heavy slammed here. If we rewind just a second, I know that we saw Chris Heroes on the Pikachu dart forward, but I play Pikachu. I know how Volt Tackle works. I know he's not going to be there when I land the heavy slam, so I don't know why I heavy slammed there. What I needed to do was walk forward, allowing Lakshmi to get hit, and then heavy slam into the bush behind him. Now, I get a little bit lucky here, because I actually do clip the Azumarill that was coming out to attack us from the bush. I don't get the Pikachu here, but my idea is I'm going to run forward, and I'm going to power nap both of them right here. And I do that as the Pikachu's Thunderstorm is coming off. If we notice, all the way in the back here is Thundertoes, barely in view of the frame. Oh, sorry, no, that's too many moths back there. He's acting as the healer, so he's coming forward trying to get wishes on people, which Thundertoes is going to need in a second here. I think this Thunderstorm is going to cause him to retreat. Now, a couple of things happen here that were not in our favor. Some of them due to poor luck, but most of them due to our opponents playing really, really well in this end fight. So just like I said that they lined themselves up for a double unite from Gardevoir and Venusaur last game, this time we kind of lined ourselves up for their strategy. So check out what goes on here. So in the middle of the screen, right above the Pikachu here, I currently knocked up Chris Heroes on this Pikachu with my Power Nap. And he's going to come down. And Sokovan is looking to coup de grace downward to just take out that Pikachu, because most of the enemies we can see right now are below us. The Pikachu darts out. He's no longer in frame. He ejects away from the coup de grace, causing Sokovan's Unite to completely miss, and then Pikachu comes right back in. And as all of that is happening, Thundertoes on the top left corner has just gotten killed because their Leafeon, Zach, he just full combos him. The Emerald 2 steps, boom, deletes the Delphox, and over here everyone gets deleted, and unfortunately we get deleted before we take out their Azumarill and their other physical attacker, Leafeon, which would have been crucial to helping Lakshmi stay alive here, because those are the 2 bad matchups that are left. But if everyone's still alive, I guess we did kill the Pikachu finally because they were so low, but unfortunately we didn't leave Lakshmi with good enough matchups here. If it were just the Chandelure plus the Slowbro, we might have a chance to stall this out, but no chance against the Azumarill and Leafeon, unfortunately. We lined ourselves up to get bad matchups, and here we see the Rayquaza does secure the Leafeon, but Leafeon's done his job. The worst part about playing Leafeon is the end game, because sometimes you end up with no opportunities to jump on the person that you need to, and unfortunately we gave our opponents the opportunity to do just that in this game, but that was so well played to them. Honestly, it's pretty cool that we both took a game off of each other, and this is not the first time it happens, and it's not the first time that the team has success taking Venusaur from us. It's definitely something well, I'll say is worth taking a look into, but this is, of course, me speaking a couple of weeks in the future, with the knowledge that we did look into it, and we're coming up with new strategies and more depth, and this Rayquaza Cup really helped shape us as a team, so these matches were really, really cool. And congrats to these opponents for their adaptation and being able to take us down in Game 2. Alright, now we get to the 9th and final game against Gebooster, I don't know how to pronounce the Blastoise's name, Arson, Doomsday, and Fight the Fight? So, a couple of things went wrong for us here. We tried our usual strategy, yet again, we were not allowed to third pick Venusaur. Venusaur is getting picked really highly by some random teams, so maybe in the future we will try to either improve our depth or move things around to the point where we can pick up that Venusaur with higher priority, or perhaps pick up a team composition that does really well with or without the Venusaur. especially against the Venusaur. Now we do have a speedster, we have this Leafeon, and unfortunately, even though I went Crustle, because I thought, hey, if they're going to be Delphox and Venusaur, and they're going to be squishy, but they are going to want to back away from the fight, I'm just going to cut away their escape option and put a Rock Tomb behind them and just go kill them. That was the thought process. That was before I saw the last pick Charizard, which I don't know if this person knows that Charizard has a pretty good matchup against Crustle, or if they are just a Charizard player, but yeah, I was a little bit irked when I saw that. It's not the end of the world. We can still beat Charizards. It's just that when Charizard unites, Crustle's just a sitting duck. None of your moves do anything because they're slow and they're targeted in a direction that Charizard is only in for a split second. And so, yeah, it's one of my least favorite matchups as Crustle. But you know what? That's all right. We still have a good team, and we are finally going to get to execute one of the team composition strategies that we did practice for. That I'm going to show right here at the very beginning. So this is a very special jungle clear that really only works with this Pokemon that Sokovan suggested that is really, really interesting, and it involves the jungler actually not taking either of the buffs. So what's going on here is Thundertoes, who picked up Decidueye here, is going to take this blue buff with me, and Too Many Mots and Lakshmi are going to take the red buff up there. So Sokovan is just going to evolve off of the Xatu, both the Baltoys, possibly Lane Farm, but I think he gets it without that. Thundertoes has unfortunate luck here, having his basic attack go to that other farm, but luckily, no contesting there. Yeah, Leafeon's that easy. Cool. So the gank is already happening. There are 3 of us here, so we stop this Fennekin from scoring. And yeah, this is not... Oh, I do not envy the lane of our opponents. I know we have a Rowlet, which is famously bad, but I would rather have a Rowlet than a Charmander or a Fennekin, and they have both of those, so yikes, this is not going to be a fun time for them. Rock Tomb is something that I call an eject checker. Basically checks your opponents to see if they have an eject, and if the answer is no, they die. That is the idea behind Rock Tomb. In even moderately organized play, it's really, really effective. So this Meowscarada was getting some stacks on us. Good on them, but they don't survive from here. So we're going to go see, as usual, what happens at the mid-bird farm, because that's pretty indicative of how the rest of the early game is going to go. And a decent number of us do end up rotating here. Yeah, basically the whole team is right on time to get these. In fact, I'm right before time. I Fury Cuttered way too early there. So just like last game, my idea is to gank top over here so that usually our top laners are losing the fight because our jungler went down instead of up. So I come here with the idea of trying to fix things over here, but they weren't doing too badly over here, actually. I misread the situation a little bit. After Too Many Mots went down, I should have probably pulled back with the Sylveon. We're not in too much danger of dying, but we're definitely not here to gain too much. Okay. So I misread the situation as a viewer, just like I did in the game itself, where our reinforcements just came a lot later than the opponents. So we definitely shouldn't have been there. That was a big punt from me. So it looks like we're going to be prioritizing the top here. And I think part of that decision making was going to be to come here and try and defend this. But Too Many Mots has returned, and he held down the fort just fine. So that's cool. So now we're here. We're going to want to try and rip. At this point, we're buying time for Sokovan to get here, especially since the Regieleki just crashing into this top goal doesn't mean too much. Unfortunately for the Blastoise there, he pushes me into the berry, which gives me a longer life. And I'm getting wished on top of that. So at this point, the defenders are only buying time, right? While our team is ripping, so we're going to... Yeah, we are going to secure that. There was a chance we didn't, because they have a Solar Beam. So now we're going to rotate bottom. Bottom gets taken pretty easily. So easily, in fact, that I start heading upward almost as soon... Okay, I wait for it to go down, but definitely see that we're going to need help up there. So we start rotating upward. Lakshmi's kind of a boss, so by the time I get up here, they've basically already defended top by themselves and pushed the enemy back. But luckily, I did get here in time to catch a counter push from our opponents that were coming in with a lot of forces. They don't read the situation very well either. They try to score without realizing how many of us were coming to help, which is almost a mirror of what I had done in my previous mistake there. Alright, so we make short work of that Blastoise through its shield, which is pretty nice. We want to stay top because this objective is coming up first. We end up harassing our opponents so successfully that we actually just miss the spawn timer on the Regieleki because we're pressing into them, making sure they don't get away. I'm the only one who comes to anchor the Regi for now. Too Many Moths actually finds a Charizard all the way in our jungle. I'm not sure what they were doing over there. But this should be pretty clean. The Delphox has a chance to steal with that residual damage from the Fireworks Unite, but they don't. They had a good shot. Unfortunately, the existence of the Blastoise means that Regielekis are going to be really hard to push because Blastoise can move that Regieleki really, really far. Well, Thundertoes did a really good job of staying alive there. I think the opponents could have pressured the Decidueye a little bit better than what they were doing. Crustle has poor rip, unfortunately, but I am always going over to start the Regi so that my teammates have less to do when they do get there, at long last. Alright, I'm going to pause right here because I was looking at these levels between myself and Doomsday over here on the Delphox, seeing that I'm level 12 and they are level 11 when I'm wearing the XP share. I obviously can't pull up the page of what level everyone is because it's not an actual in-game recording, it's my screen recording, but this is pretty indicative of how much of a level advantage we accrued on this team. And that's going to be pretty bad for them come the Ray fight because Thundertoes is almost level 14, just hit 14. That's two of us that are level 14. I didn't catch the other levels, but I assume they're really strong. We're going into the Ray fight feeling really good. I have my Focus Band, I have Rebel Rouser. I don't have Eject, but having my level 12 means this Crustle is going to be really hard for our opponents to kill. Put up a defensive Rock Tomb right there, and this is business as usual. So right on cue, the Rayquaza is going to spawn. We're going to wait and see what the opponents are doing. So we see a couple of them went to defend the Regieleki, but some of them come here. We want to try and eliminate this Delphox now that it showed itself, and we were pretty lucky there. Lucky, and maybe Thundertoes was actually just really diligent about timing that arrow, but the arrow, had it been a little bit later, it would have missed due to my X-Scissor, so that bought us a lot of time killing the Delphox earlier. So here, what I'm doing is probably not what you should be doing, unless my team weren't ripping, but this is one of those situations where we just had our cake and ate it too, as they say, where this would have been a win condition without the Rayquaza if our teams just stalled. The Rayquaza would have been a win condition with or without what I was doing if we had just held there. But the idea was I really wanted that Venusaur out of the fights because I don't want Solar Beams anywhere near the Rayquaza, and that's what got it. So overall, the record was 5 wins and 4 losses, and that equated to 17th place. I think in a different world, we would have easily picked up at least one of those losses. This could have easily been a 6-3 with these exact teams. There was really only one team that we went up against that really felt so out of our league that we couldn't do anything about them. The others, they had strategy and tactics that they used to defeat us, but many of them had actually lost to us before defeating us. So overall, it actually felt pretty good. This team, despite being very new, we have a really good synergy. I think our plan went really well. It's a plan that our opponents had to adjust to in order to defeat us, which also felt really good. You know, it's not a very common experience to have your Pokemon banned against you, and that's what I really like about these Rayquaza Cups. Now, I know a lot of people out there don't have 5 players that they queue up with a lot, but there are a lot of opportunities from what I've heard from other people to meet up with other people on Discord servers, and if you do get a chance to do that, I really encourage it because these cups, they're really, really fun, and they're free to join. You don't have to stay for all the games. Of course, if you do join a team of 5, then maybe it's a little different because there are more expectations, but overall, I'm really, really enjoying these Rayquaza Cups. For players like us that really don't have much of an expectation to join the competitive scene anytime soon, this is basically the closest we can get, and so I really actually enjoy the existence of these Rayquaza Cups. But I'm going to stop rambling because this video is ridiculously long already. At this point, thank you so much if you've watched it this far. I will see you guys in the next video. Toodles.